We'll officially get started. I'm Lynn Kilborn, the Director of Development at the Methodist Foundation for Arkansas. And here joining me in our conference room is our development team. And so I'll let them introduce themselves.
Good morning. My name is Amy Anderson, and I'm the Northwest Arkansas Development Officer.
And she is so awesome that she's actually in here twice. So
Right.
Two different angles.
I'm Wayne Clark, and I'm the president of the foundation. Good to be here with all of you, and thank you for joining us.
And Reverend C.E. McAdoo is joining us. Here he comes, perfect timing.
Yeah.
I'll let you introduce yourself.
I'm Charlie C.E. McAdoo, a gift officer. Glad to see everyone this morning.
So, and we have several other of our staff members, as I said earlier, who are joining us on this call as well. And folks from around our conference, we have folks, lay folks, we have folks who serve in their local churches, and I think we're even going to have some pastors who will be joining us. And we're really grateful for your time with us this morning, and we all look forward to learning together. We at the foundation, it's this is part of the way that we can serve Methodist churches in Arkansas is providing information on good or on creative ways to be good stewards of all the resources that we have. And some of that means understanding tax laws and the implications of tax laws and the opportunities that we have through our IRAs. And so I am excited. I love this title that Tyler our presenter suggested, IRAs, RMDs, and QCDs. Oh my. You know, as a United Methodist, I thought that I knew acronyms, but stepping into this work, there are way more acronyms than I could have ever thought possible. But our guest presenter today is Tyler Curtis, and he is skilled for this to help us understand all these acronyms that we have thrown out. Tyler is our counterpart in the Kansas Methodist Foundation. He is their chief development officer, and he started with their foundation in 2021. But he's brought with him over 20 years of experience in education and development. So just like we do here at our foundation, Tyler serves individuals, churches, and church-related organizations through donor development and through estate planning. You saw in our advertisements for this event, his education history and all of his credentials, but I also want you to know just a few other fun things about Tyler. He's wicked funny. He also enjoys road biking, craft beer, and he is passionate about leadership development for laity and for local pastors. And he cares deeply about his local church. And it's always impressive to me to meet someone else in this work in another conference and to see how not only are they connected at their foundation, but they're also plugged in at a local church. And Tyler is a leader and very plugged in at his local United Methodist Church. And I think that speaks highly of him. And I'm grateful to welcome him today. So I'm going to now turn it over to Tyler Curtis. So if you will give Tyler a round of applause, welcoming him to our Zoom room. I don't know if you want to do your hand, if you want to hear the thunderous applause.
I hear it. It's overwhelming. It's like an Olympic gold medal right now.
Ooh, okay. One request, Tyler. Now, when you finish your presentation, I'm going to need you to stick the landing, and you're going to have to now. since you brought up the Olympics, we're going to need.
Absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity and the invitation. You know, I just have a little hold my breath moment there when Lynn said, "I want you to know some other things." I'm like, oh no, what could she be sharing right now? She kept it pretty good. This is a great connection. So most of you probably know that we're part of the National Association for United Methodist Foundations. Lynn actually oversees that organization, and we get together hopefully once a year, every year, but sometimes even as a conference, we get together more often than that. But we're colleagues, we're partners, and we just want to see, you know, our church, our ministries grow. And one way that they grow is through financial resources. It's not the only way they grow, but it's a key way they grow. I haven't met a pastor yet, or been in a church yet that says we can do this ministry minus resources, like money. So money is a key part of it. It's not the end. It's a key part, though, of executing our ministries. So it's always a pleasure to talk about ways to maximize giving, ways to do this work most effectively and most efficiently. And I really appreciate the opportunity today to talk to you all. And even if you're viewing this after the fact, thanks for taking the time to learn more about this topic. Could we start off in a word of prayer right quick, and then I'll share my slide deck and we'll go through some material. Father God, I just thank you. I thank you for this opportunity today to be with this group of disciples, these folks who are called to do your work in your world. God, I just ask that your presence be here, your spirit be here. Help us to realize your work through your Son, and help us to do that in ways that maximize our investments and ways that we can help the church through generous giving. I just ask that you grant people with generous hearts and generous minds that we can complete that work that you're calling us to do every day. And God, I ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
So you will have a copy of the slides as a follow-up. You're happy to take, you're free to take notes, all those kind of things, but you'll have a copy of the slides, and I think you'll even get a copy of the recording if there's something that you might have missed or want to review or those kind of things. My royalty fees are very, very low, so just contact me and we'll get you in touch with my attorneys and get that all worked. But Lynn's already done that on your behalf, so good on her for doing that.
And I'll add one thing, Tyler. Amy is managing our chat. So feel free, if y'all have questions during the presentation, to drop those into the chat. And then at the end of Tyler's presentation, we'll also open it up for questions.
Yeah, and ask questions anytime. You're not going to break my train of thought. The fact that I have a train of thought is probably comical in itself. So feel free to interrupt. You're not going to ruin anything by doing so. You're probably going to make it better by asking a relevant question. So hopefully you can see that slide deck now. Just the cover slide there. But like Lynn said, I get to serve as the development officer here in Kansas. So these are going to be branded Kansas. Hopefully that doesn't offend anybody. You can put the AR in front of it, and then it's just like Arkansas, right? So it's just pronounced differently. We even pronounce the river in Kansas differently. We pronounce it the Arkansas River in Kansas. That's strange, I know, but it's a Kansas thing. So anyway,
Well, it's incorrect, but
I heard something there. I didn't hear the whole thing, but I think anytime we talk about money and ministry, we've got to spend just a little bit of time getting our mind around what is our theology of money and just reminding ourselves this is why we talk about money in context with ministry. So I have a couple, three things here just to throw out as we get started about the concept of money for theology as United Methodist. And we start with this premise, right? God is the provider. God owns it all. Everything we touch in this world, everything we have in this world is temporary. We know that. So what is our job? Our job is to steward. We receive those blessings and we steward them. And we're called to do the most good with the things that we've been blessed with to do God's work in God's world. We know that it's all temporary because none of us are taking anything with us after we die, right? At that point, we are leaving everything behind. We truly are temporarily stewarding these things so that we can do the most good now with what we have been blessed with during this life, but we're not going to need it in that next life. You talk about Christ, and Christ didn't say, hey, I've got to go back for that favorite pair of sandals or that favorite hammer before I ascend, because he knew also I don't need it where I'm going, and we don't need it where we're going. So we are temporarily taking care of these things that God has provided us with, and we got to start there, right? we've really got to start there by releasing this idea that we own it, that it's ours. It's not ours. It's temporarily in our control to give accordingly to what God wants us to do. And that certainly means that we take care of ourselves and our families and we have fun, we go on vacations and those kind of things. And it also means that we love those who don't have the benefits that some of us have in this world. We have a Native American bishop in our conference. I think he's the first, and I think he's the only Native American bishop amongst the United Methodist Church. But he shared this when he was installed as bishop last year. And I think it really applies financially as well. But when Bishop Wilson, he shared this proverb, he said, this Native American proverb says, we don't inherit the earth from our ancestors. Rather, we borrow it from our children, even to the 7th generation. That's a long ways out, by the way. That's a long ways out. If we look at it, like one of my favorite Avett Brothers songs talks about how we are only 3 generations removed from Abraham Lincoln. We think of that as ancient history. That's only 3 generations. And for the Native Americans, they look at this and they say, hey, look, when it comes to stewarding the earth, we are borrowing it from our children, even to the 7th generation, 250 some odd years in the future. That's what we're doing. So if we apply that to financial stewardship, we can really say that, we don't inherit our resources from our ancestors. We might inherit something. I mean, I get the practicality of that, but we're really borrowing what we have in terms of resources from God so that we can take care of our children and our neighbors, even to the 7th generation. And I know that gets into some legacy stuff too, but I think there's a close tie between giving now and also preparing to give later. So I kind of just, want to start this out with God's the provider, we're the steward, and we are certainly called to do the best work that we can do in keeping in mind with what's going to happen way in the future and setting things up for success. So when it comes to generous giving, talking to your church members, your colleagues, and maybe even talking about these things yourself, you got to kind of start with, what do I think God's calling me to do? When it comes to my stewardship, what am I being called to do? And maybe that's the annual tithe. Maybe that's that 10%. Maybe it's just, hey, I did a really good job of giving last year. I'm going to keep on doing that. It felt really good. Sometimes it's like, well, whatever's in my pocket, I'm going to give. And we've probably all been in those situations, right? Where we attend a church or a ministry. We're just kind of as a guest, and all of a sudden they start passing the plate. And you're like, well, I guess whatever I have in my wallet right now, I'm just going to put that in the plate because that's what I feel like I'm called to do. The dangerous thing though is this last one, right? Whenever we talk to people about stewardship, and they're like, well, whatever's left at the end of the month, I'll do that for charity. Well, we are consumers in nature, right? And we will devour it all if we allow ourselves to do so. I do think that as we're talking about the ministry of money, we've got to encourage people to think about, what do you want to do intentionally to be generous? You have to intentionally aim to be generous. It doesn't just happen. So how do you maybe grow this in terms of a traditional IRA? What does that maybe look like? And a little disclaimer down there, I'm certainly not a tax advisor. I'm certainly not a financial advisor either. So obviously talk to people about those things. But I do stay at least educated enough to give you factual things that are accurate. But how they affect you is certainly between you and your advisors. So qualified retirement plans, what are those things? Those are things that we do through our work that help us have resources after retirement. Some people in the private sector, you might have a 401k. That's a private sector retirement plan. It's a pre-tax plan. They pull money out of your salary, or they put money into a 401k account, and it's not taxed, right? These are all pre-tax dollars. In the nonprofit world and in the church world, that's called a 403b. And if you have a West Path plan, that's a 403b plan. So whether it's a 401k or a 403b, it's a pre-tax retirement account, and you don't pay tax when it goes into those accounts. So you don't pay tax on the onset, you don't pay any tax on the appreciation, but you do pay tax on the distributions. So whenever you start taking money out of this, that's when the government says, hey, by the way, you never paid income tax on the earnings. Now I need my income tax. So this is a tax deferred plan, right? The taxes come out at retirement. So you can certainly withdraw money from these, and without penalty after 59 and a half years of age. You are required to take distributions from these kind of mechanisms at a certain point. We're going to talk about the RMDs today, and you are going to be taxed by whatever income bracket you're at when you take those withdrawals. So the advantage here is the money goes into an account, it grows tax-free, it is tax-free when it goes into that account. And a lot of times when we retire, our income tax bracket goes down because we usually don't make as much money in retirement as we do when we're working. So these are really good ways of saving and growing income, but you do have to take it out, and there are some tax things I thought we were going to talk about today is how we can maximize those tax accounts. So for a long time, when it comes to required minimum distributions, this is the amount that you're required to take out every year. For a long time, that was 70 and a half. So starting at age 70 and a half, you had to start taking out required minimum distributions. You saved all this up, and now it's time to start pulling some of it out. The Secure Act actually raised that to 72. And then Secure 2.0, that was in 2023, raised it to the age of 73 for people that were born from 51 to 59. And if you were born on or after 1960, it's actually 75. So you get a longer amount of time for that account to grow before you have to start taking those distributions out of it. So just as a reminder, that RMD, that's the minimum amount that has to be taken out of that account to avoid penalty. And your administrator, whoever administers this, they're going to tell you, here's what your RMD is for calendar year 2024. So they're going to give this to you, but we're going to also go through a little bit today so you kind of understand how that actually is calculated. But you have to at least take the minimum. You can take more, but you have to at least take the minimum at these various age points. So how do you calculate this? So if you're wondering, if you want to get in the weeds of this a little bit, here's how it's calculated. You take the fund balance as of the end of the year, and you divide it by what they call a life expectancy factor. That's how many years you're anticipated to live based on calculations, right? So, so hopefully you're not looking at this and saying, oh no, I only have 20 years left. But that's how they have to, do this in accrual kind of things to make sure it all works out. So in this example, if you're 78 and you have about $400,000 in your IRA, in that year, you are going to have to take out at least $18,182. That's what's required of you if you have one of these RMD, these traditional IRAs. So that's how it's done. Okay, you're gonna get this number to you, but that's how it's done. So using that, how do I actually give out of my IRA to my church or other 501c3s? As long as you are 70 and a half. So now wait a minute, I thought the RMD was at 72 or 73 or 75. That's true, but what they didn't change is your qualified charitable distribution age. Oh, what's that mean? That means that you can actually make charitable distributions out of your IRAs before you have to take income out. So if you're 73 and you don't have to do an RMD until you're 75, well, you can actually do a QCD, a qualified charitable distribution, starting at age 70 and a half. So you can take money and give it to the church or 501c3s before you're 59 and a half, but it's going to be penalized. Between 59 and 70, there's going to be, it's possible, it's just not usually something that people do. Starting at 70 and a half, there's no penalty at all. So you can do a QCD at 70 and a half, and at 73 and on, you're required to do an RMD, and you still can make part of that in a QCD. So just as you kind of know, like, you're talking to people about what they have as the assets, IRAs are giving tools at any time, but sometimes there's going to be a penalty attached to that. But at certain time periods and age ranges, there's no penalty. And when you do have to start taking that income out, it's very beneficial to do that as a qualified charitable distribution, at least part of it as such. So here's kind of a typical way that people get their money out of their IRAs. So using that example, I've got an RMD that's 18,000 and some change there. I'm going to get that into my bank account, and my tax bracket is 22%. So essentially what I'm getting is a little over $14,000 on that money. And then I'm going to use that cash, and maybe I'm going to give 6,000 to the church, and the rest of it's for my living. That's kind of a traditional way of getting money during life, during our working years, and then giving charitably. However, when you use the mechanism called a qualified charitable distribution, you are using the tax advantage of that. So what does that look like? The qualified charitable distribution, part of that requirement, part of that $18,000 requirement, you're going to shove some of that right to your church at the outset. You don't want it to hit your account. If it hits your account, you're paying income tax on it. However, charities don't pay income tax. So if they get part of that distribution, that money has gone in tax-free, it's grown tax-free, and it's going out tax-free. This is not a tax avoidance, for tax. We do need to pay taxes. We need things like that, right? But the government allows us this opportunity to take some of this and put it towards good works, like churches and nonprofits, because they also know that those provide a social benefit. So we're just going to give this social benefit in this manner. So we're going to take the RMD and, there we go. I switched slides there. That RMD is going to go, instead of to you, it's going to go to your church first, and then the rest of it's going to be left behind for your income. So just to kind of give you an idea of this in this example, if that RMD is 18,000 and you want to give 6,000 of it to your church, you're going to direct your plan administrator, take 6,000 of that and give it straight to the church or straight to the Methodist Foundation. I want it to go straight there. And what that does is that pulls over $12,000 for income, which results in $9,000 of real money, because again, that $12,000 is going to be at 22% tax rate. And that gives you $1,300 more to go towards your expenses than it does if you take it directly and give your church out of that. So that's how this is a tax benefit, tax-wise way of giving. You give your impact, and you also impact the amount of income that you have, the dollars you have after that transaction. Amy, was there a question? Oh, you might have to unmute.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Unmute. There we go.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, technology. Yes, we had a question in the chat about QCDs.
Yeah.
And whether QCD can come from a SEP IRA or simple IRA.
So talk to your plan administrator on those for sure, because some of those have changed the rules, and I'm not down into the deep end of that enough. But ask first. If I recall correctly, they don't, but ask, because based on sometimes when those accounts are set up, they might be grandfathered in, and in that manner, you might be able to do QCDs out of them. But ask. It's always good to ask, because even if they say no, well, okay, but if they say yes, that's going to be a tax advantage to it. So at least ask your plan administrator.
Awesome, thank you.
Anything else?
Nope, I think that's it.
Okay. So that's how you do the QCD straight to your charity. You don't have to do the entire RMD. So a lot of people in our business say, give your RMD, and people freak out. They're like, I need that 18,000. Well, you may need 18,000, you may need 12,000, you may need 40, whatever you need, but take what you need to live. And then if you don't need all of it out of your mix of Social Security, IRA, retirement pensions, savings, and those kind of things, you can at least give part of that required minimum distribution charitably. And that's a better bucket of money to give your charitable distributions from in a tax advantaged way. So consider, if you only have a 401k or a 403b, once you're no longer active in those organizations, when you do retire, a lot of times you're going to roll that over into an IRA. So you don't do QCDs from a 401k or from a 403b. You give those from an IRA, but you roll over that 401k or 403b into a retirement. So, and that's going to be a traditional IRA, because again, these are pre-tax dollars. So you can't roll them over into a Roth because that's after tax money. So you roll your 401ks or 403bs into a traditional IRA. If you're not yet 70 and a half years of age, you can still do things that are smart giving by giving stock or using donor advised funds. So, and Lynn and the team there at the Arkansas Methodist Foundation, they'll talk to you all day long about donor advised funds and gifts of appreciated stock and how to use those things. Because again, you're trying to use something that's appreciated that you would be paying tax on gains, but you're using that charitably. And the Arkansas Methodist Foundation, just like the Kansas Methodist Foundation, does not pay taxes. So if you give those to us, we don't pay tax on those things. Into life planning, if you are considering an estate gift, typically your traditional IRA is the best source of that giving. It depends on your asset mix, but almost every asset transfers over to the next generation minus taxes if you are in a household that is exempt from that. So in other words, if you have a net worth of somewhere south of $14 million, you don't have an estate tax problem. If you're married, that jumps to $28 million. So if you're somewhere south of those numbers, typically the only asset that you have that's going to accrue some kind of tax when it's transferred to your children or other loved ones is going to be this traditional IRA, because that's money that you have that you earned and put away tax-free, but you haven't ever paid taxes on it. So even the folks that inherit that, they need to pay that income tax on it. And by the way, they pay that at the rate that their taxes are, not yours. So if I'm 50 years old in the prime of my life, making the most money I'm ever going to make, and I inherit this IRA, I've got 10 years to deplete it, and I'm paying my tax rate right now, not the tax rate of my parent or the person that gave it to me. So keep that in mind too. This is usually the best asset you have, is the traditional IRA to do your charitable giving from. At least deplete it first before other assets are used for that gift. So what are the limitations on a QCD gift? Well, in churches, many churches do have, they do have a federal number, that employment identification number, but they don't file these things called 990s. So when you're doing like a QCD from your app, that may be tied to Fidelity or something like that, you can't find your church. Well, what am I going to do? I want to give this QCD to my church, but I can't find it on the list because they don't file a 990. Well, this is a way that the Methodist Foundation can be your friend, because the Methodist Foundation does file a 990. And you can put that QCD towards an account there, and they can then give it to your church. So those are ways that you can do that. They can't, though, go to a donor advised fund. This is kind of the lame thing about QCDs, is they can't go into a donor advised fund. They have to go straight from the fund administrator straight to the nonprofit. They can go to legacy funds, they can go to endowment funds, but they can't go to donor advised funds. However, if your churches have an account with the Arkansas Methodist Foundation, that QCD can go to that account, and it does benefit your church, even though it doesn't go straight to their coffers from your account if you can't find it. So there are some limitations there, but there's also some workarounds and ways to avoid some of those things. The taxes and the process, the amount that you give on a QCD will not be deducted on your taxes. So you've got to file a form there when you go about doing that. So your advisor is going to give you some paperwork that says, hey, you made a QCD. Now you need to report that on your taxes. So the way you get the full benefit there is you do have to fill out an IRS form 1099-R. So if you're helping people, or if you yourself are thinking about one of these gifts, just know that I'm going to do my QCD. And at the end of the year, well, at the beginning of the following year, when you put all your tax documents together, let your accountant know, if they don't already know, that I did a QCD to the Arkansas Methodist Foundation or my church or other 501c3, whatever it is, and I need to do the 1099. If you do your own taxes, you just have to know this, right? And know whenever the TurboTax or whatever asks you how you did your income, you have to know I need to fill out a 1099-R so that I'll know that. So you'll fill out that form and you'll just put down, this is my distribution, and this is how much I took as a taxable amount. The rest of it went through a QCD. So you're going to put, I took out 18,000. The taxable amount's only 12 because I gave 6 to nonprofit. So that's how you actually account for it and get it taken care of. And that way you're not paying any income tax on that QCD. So just kind of know that as part of that process. Just when it comes to like some finance things, and again, I'm not a financial advisor, but those pre-tax accounts, those are great ways to give during life when after you're utilizing and roll it over, but it's really best at death. That Roth IRA, that's a really great way of growing after tax dollars. And there are no RMDs on Roth IRAs. There's no tax on Roth IRAs because you're using after income tax money to fund it. So, and the government, by the way, is really incentivizing Roth IRAs. They need money now. The deficit is going up. They need money now. So they are doing all kinds of things to encourage people to give to their Roth IRAs while they're working, and even roll money into Roth IRAs because they need the money, they need the tax money now, not later deferred. So think about, how can I leverage the Roth IRA? And maybe I even leverage that in a way that I want to build it up. And maybe that's the bucket I want to give to my kids, because my kids aren't going to pay income tax on that Roth IRA. Same thing with brokerage accounts. My kids aren't going to pay any income tax, any tax period, when they inherit that stock. It's going to have a step up in basis. So if I'm thinking like inheritance and impact, I want to think about Roth and brokerage. Those are things I can pass to the next generation. And I'm going to use these retirement monies to give charitably funds, both during life through my traditional IRA, as well as in death, because typically we're going to have some residual with those accounts at death. So there's going to be some money left on it. So that's how I think, you can save all you can, and you can really give all you can when you know what buckets of money and how they're taxed and how they benefit the entities that you want to support, your nonprofits as well as your children. So, in a state, the Secure Act, it certainly impacts, it gives the IRAs to the next generation. And this is like a big change that happened with Secure 2.0, is they put a time clock on it for most things. Most of us, if we inherit a traditional IRA, most of us have to deplete that in 10 years. There's a 10-year clock on that. And that's a change. So that change in Secure 2.0, you have a 10-year clock to eat up all of that money that you inherited. So with that in mind, the only exceptions to that is if your spouse inherits it or a minor child, they don't have to take it out in 10 years. So if you're the first to die in a marriage, you don't have to take it out in 10 years. If you're a minor child, so if I was to die today, I've got a 17-year-old and a 14-year-old, my wife too, they wouldn't have to take out my money, okay? If the person's disabled or chronically ill, they don't have to deplete it in 10 years. And if the individual who is not more than 10 years younger than the IRA owner of the plan, which would typically be your spouse or certainly a loved one, right? So if I leave it to my nephew, who's only 8 years younger than me, he doesn't have to take it out in 10 years either. So there's very few exceptions, but for the most part, most of us have beneficiaries that are children and considerably younger than us. I don't know of anybody who's had a child at the age of less than 10 years old. So I don't see how that would be possible. Well, I don't want to think about that. Anyway, that's the exceptions there. And just know that typically those people are going to have to pay the tax on that one. So that's what I have for you today, sans questions. So I'll probably have some wrap-up comments here, but what questions do you have now related to how QCDs and IRA gifts work? How can I help? What did I miss telling you about that you have questions about? And feel free to unmute. We can do that. Yeah, chat or is it?
Let's see. We'll get it started. We received I'll let Amy share.
All right. Yes, hold on one second. Going back to the QCD, can I make a QCD from SEP IRA?
Oh, he's Googling it right now.
Oh, are you? Yeah. I was gonna say, I was like, well, I'll go ahead and look that up right quick.
You're always being watched, Tyler.
That's all right. That's all right.
Yeah.
Funds within a SEP IRA or a simple IRA are ineligible to be a QCD only if the SEP IRA or the simple IRA is ongoing. The IRS has defined ongoing to mean there needs to be an employer contribution made for the plan year ending with or within the IRA owner's taxable year in which the charitable. And
I think that's pretty much saying, like, if you're still working when you die, or when this is given over to somebody, if you're still working, you can probably do the QCD from it, but it's got to be an active. It can't be after you retire.
Okay.
Most of the time, people are using QCDs and retire. So, yeah, I think you're really just asking professionals their advice on those things. It is, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Other questions?
Yes, I have a question. So, have you done I'm just trying to figure out in my mind the difference between, this sounds great, just put it directly from your IRA to the charity.
Yep.
However, if you take it into income, and then make the gift from that income, you can deduct that amount of the gift, correct? So how does that math work?
Yeah, so great question, great question. And this is always, you know, a good conversation with your accountant, right? Most people struggle to get beyond the standard deduction when they're making their annual gifts. So when the standard deduction jumped up to like over $20,000 a year, people were like, well, what in the world? Like none of my charitable giving adds up to over $20,000 a year. So if you are in the bucket of, you know, I give considerably more than the standard deduction and I itemize every year, it may be worth more. Almost every accountant I've worked with so far on these plans, they say, hey, avoiding the income tax is far more beneficial than doing the charitable deduction because you can only deduct part of the gift depending on what kind of asset it is. Cash is 100%, but stocks and those kind of things are 60% of your AGI. So depending on your circumstance, if you do itemize, it's worth asking about. If you don't itemize, there's no question that getting out of your IRA is more of a benefit. But if you itemize, it's worth asking the question, do I take it out of my IRA as a QCD or do I deduct it as a charitable gift?
Okay.
Is that clear enough?
Yeah.
Some forms of income as well as deductions are phased in based on your adjusted gross income. So if you've not included the QCD in your income, you can benefit from those phase-in amounts.
Tyler, I know that on our call, I see folks who work for United Methodist churches and who help folks within their local church to find ways, you know, to be generous. What advice do you have for either the pastors or the finance folks who are here about how we can better share this information with the folks who are in our churches?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to try to pull up and you're free to utilize it or even take it. And you may have even resources there at the Arkansas Methodist Foundation that are like pamphlets on giving from an IRA. But certainly getting the information into the newsletter, getting little call out cards that go into your program during your stewardship Sundays. We certainly, and the Arkansas Foundation does the same thing. Stewardship Sundays should be several Sundays throughout the year and not just one or 4 Sundays in the month of October or November, where all of a sudden your attendance dips because they know you're on a stewardship series. Hopefully those things are things that you're just, you know, mindful of, right? But because it's a good idea to give this information not only at the end of the year, but towards the beginning of the year when people are getting notifications from their IRA owners, those plan custodians, that here's how much you have to take out this year. They're going to get the information in January of the year. And if they know then that I could make a QCD sometime during the year from this money that I had to take out this year, that's good to know, right? So several times throughout the year, getting those information into newsletters and those kind of things. And I think this is an opportunity that none of us do a good job of articulating. When it comes to QCDs, we always tie those to the RMD. So you can give part of that 18,000, or you could give all 18,000. I think one of the things that we, like I said, we don't do a great job of is the rule on QCDs is actually you can take up to $100,000 a year. Now, most people don't want to do that, but at the same time, if there's Social Security, pensions, other sources of income, make it such that they really don't need the IRA income and it has a healthy balance, they can actually do up to 100,000 out of that account in a given year. So if you don't, if you have parishioners that have very, very healthy IRAs, and they're always wondering, this IRA is going to outlive me and then some. My kids are going to have to pay taxes on it. You can deplete it, at least parts of it, during life. And when it comes to a capital campaign or something like that, a special giving opportunity, well, you know, you have people that are sitting in your pews that could be giving you a sum of money out of their IRA. They get it tax-free. No taxes have been paid on that money ever. It's a really good opportunity for some people to look at. It's not the right choice for everybody. So you gotta know that, right? It's not the right choice for everybody, but there can certainly be more than just the RMD that's taken out. Most people will want to do something more like part of RMD. But if I do have this available on our website, and happy to share it, and you can take it. But this is just kind of a a half-page flyer on how a QCD works. So again, it's just kind of a simple little tool, but I think having these things in your bulletins, having these things occasionally show up in your newsletters, on your Facebook posts, those kind of things. The number one way you could probably do is contact the Arkansas Methodist Foundation and have them come out and do a presentation, right? Because they're experts and they'll do a great job of explaining this to people that you're invited to present to. So give you a little plug there, and team.
Thank you, Tyler. We appreciate it.
Kathy has a question.
Kathy with a K.
Yeah, Kathy with a K. Not a question, just a comment. When I have talked to people about QCDs, one of the things that several of the people that I talked to were giving, weekly in the collection plate, and they found, and I said, one of the advantages of doing the charitable distribution is it doesn't come out of your spending money.
Yes.
And so several of them went to that just because that made a big difference on what they had available to spend.
Yeah. Talking to people about that, right? You're not giving out of your cash flow. You're giving out of an account that's already set up, and it's not your week-to-week, month-to-month cash flow. That's a huge benefit. Thanks for sharing that, Kathy, because I think if more people understood, now wait a minute, I give it out of this bucket, and then I don't give it out of my monthly cash flow. What a great benefit, right? What a great benefit. Thank you. I think it's just really it's important that not everybody thinks about the buckets of money they have, right? They just kind of think about what's in my checking account. That's what I can give, is what's in my checking account. And most people don't have their largest asset in their checking account. Most of them have it in their retirement accounts, in their homes, in their brokerage accounts. That's where their money is, but they don't think they have money to give because it's not in their checking account. So if we can educate people to think beyond their month-to-month checking account, people really do understand that there is abundance and not scarcity.
I had a question.
Yeah, CE.
Yes, Tyler. This is C. When you get your letter from you and you got your RMD, is it possible that can go directly from I'm a retired Methodist preacher, directly from West Path to your local church on a monthly basis, or would it have to be given at one time? Because I was going back to Kathy's whole thing about it's not taken out of your, it's not money that you go have for your regular expenses, but I'm asking, does it have to be a one-time payment, or will they send it to your local church on a monthly basis?
I think they would do it on a monthly basis, but you would have to make the request monthly.
Okay,
So, and they may, say, hey, if you're just gonna give this amount over the year, why don't you do it that way? But if you're concerned about, the recipient of that dollar, maybe not being able to manage it as well, if it's not given on a month-to-month basis, you can still send in those requests and just do it more frequently. Most plan administrators are of course going to encourage you to do it,
Would
on a yearly, if not a quarterly kind of basis.
would that be
Okay.
like, would that be a good opportunity, Tyler, for a donor advised fund?
So it would be if
But it
you
can't
could
go
do
to
the RM, if you could do the QCD to the DAF.
Oh, that's right. Actually, one of the folks who's on this call, I believe that we
That's
had that
okay. It's a
conversation
lot
with
of
someone a
information.
few months ago. We had that conversation about the QCD into a donor advised fund. Okay,
Okay,
thanks for that
so-
clarification.
Speaking of that, Tyler, what's a good answer when we're talking with folks and they ask the question, well, why can't it go to a donor advised fund? It can go to, I kind of have what I would give for an answer, but I would be shooting from my hip too, so.
Well, it's the rules, it's the IRS rules.
Well.
That's the biggest thing, it's illegal. So in this case, you can pull out well, it's actually illegal to transfer a QCD to a donor
I
advised.
guess
fund.
what's the rationale that the government?
So here's the rationale. So evidently, some really smart folks found a way to funnel their QCDs that were again taken out tax-free, grew tax-free, and then put them into donor advised funds that would then go to their family foundation where they pay income to their children who run.
Mm,
So
Always somebody.
Wow.
yes, so through this funneling thing, the IRS said, no, this is not right. Now, most people would not do that, right? Most people would dump that RMD into a DAF, that QCD into a DAF, and do the right thing with it. So our one workaround on this, I'll share this with the audience. Our one workaround is we have permanent funds that do have a cash side as well as an endowed side. So we allow people to make distributions from permanent funds, other than just like their annual endowment amount. So if people want to put part of their RMD, so that QCD into their permanent fund, but they want some of that to go out immediately, we do that. So like that $6,000 gift, if they want that $6,000 to go to the Tyler Curtis Endowment Fund, but they want $3,000 to go immediately to the church, we'll take the $3,000, send it to church, and $3,000 goes to the endowment fund. So that's one workaround that we've done to get around that issue. But it's really not a pure DAF, right? Because a pure DAF is like that charitable savings account. It's there and you use it when you want to use it. Our workaround is just you have to do it immediately. So
Okay.
not the best, but it works, and it doesn't trigger any kind of issue with the IRS when we do it that way.
Thank you.
Are there
Other
any other?
questions? Sure. Well, that's what I have for you. I really do appreciate the time. On your slide deck, there's a couple slides at the very, very end that get into other kinds of topics. One of them is on like creating a charitable gift annuity with a rollover from an IRA. You can do that for up to $50,000. That may or may not be something that you want to do, but there's information on that in the slide deck that you get. It goes to such few, it's applicable to such few folks that I don't think it's worth spending a lot of time on, but you can read that slide when you get it. And then the other thing is just that clumping strategy, right? So, and then most of us, kind of know that clumping strategy when you talk about donor advised funds. But you can always think about that in terms of the QCDs too. maybe you do take that $100,000 and make that big gift that 1 year, but then you use other means of making gifts in other years. So I think it's all about giving our constituents ideas on how this may apply to their personal situation, but for them to kind of wrestle with, okay, what's my total asset mix look like? And knowing that I have my IRA out here, that's one bucket. And I do have my checking account. I do have my house. I do have my brokerage account, all these kind of things. But the more that we can educate people about the different buckets they have and how they can utilize those buckets in the most efficient and meaningful way, the more money is going to eventually go to ministry. So, and that's all of our goals, right? Our shared goal in all of this is how do we maximize money for ministry? And that's the intent of the conversation is to truly maximize those dollars so that there's more money for ministry.
Well, thank you so much, Tyler. We really
Yeah.
appreciate your time. We'll give you another thunderous round of applause. Stick the landing, stick the landing. Yeah, stick your landing.
Yep. Here we go. Oh, I didn't move. I did not.
Got it.
I did not.
It's so good. The Olympic spirit is alive and well on this Zoom. So thank you. We appreciate your friendship, Tyler, and your time with us this morning and sharing this with us, because I do believe that seeds have been planted that will fund ministry well into the future. So we're really grateful for you sharing your knowledge with us. And friends, thank you all for joining us. As I look around the names, I know that we have folks from different United Methodist churches around our state, and we are so grateful that you have tuned in today. I'll be following up this Zoom with an email with Tyler's slide deck, as well as a copy of this recording. And then this recording will also live on our website, where you can watch the previous learning Zooms that we've had. So we'll have all these resources continually available for folks, since this is one of the ways that we get to strengthen Methodist ministry in Arkansas, is to have these kind of conversations to develop all of our understanding of ways to be creatively generous. So I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, and thank you for joining us. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
y'all.
Thank you.